What was it about the knee lift?
meal.
Talk to me about the knee lift with Mr. Wrestling.
Well, I was wrestling too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wrestling too. That's a completely different animal.
Well, I mean, that's Johnny Walker.
Yeah.
And he's going to become an immediate top draw. I mean, I guess Woods wasn't able to work a territory. He had some issues in Atlanta, maybe with Ray Gunkel's widow, Ann, maybe Eddie Graham. Do you know anything about what Tim Woods' issue was with Graham and Gunkel and how Mr. Wrestling 2 became a thing?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, it was always about money. You can boil down every disagreement in the business for the most part to money.
Cash or creative. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they did this Mr. Wrestling number 2 thing, and same white mask, but it had a black outline around the eyes, nose, and mouth. And it made Johnny Walker, because Johnny Walker as a talent was like watching paint dry.
Oh,
no personality, just an old man.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he at 29, he looked like he was 55. He's just one of those guys always looked old.
Like J.J. Dillon or Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
They look the same age for the last 40 years. Yeah.
Yes. So, you could say, hey, they never aged, but yet they aged prematurely. It's like, woof. But so 2 was, he was a decent worker.
Right.
But he was short, pudgy, and hokey. I got short, pudgy, and hokey in a mask in Georgia. They love that shit. And so 2 really took off in Georgia, man. Big time. And they found life for Johnny Walker. Then what happens is Jimmy Carter is president. Jimmy was from Plains, Georgia. And they used to go to the matches in Columbus, which was Fred Ward, or Paul Jones.
Not the wrestling guy, the other one.
The promoter, Paul Jones in Georgia, was friends with Jimmy Carter, and of course his mother. His wife was Rosalind, wasn't it? But what was the mother's name? Whatever. Jimmy Carter's mom, the president's mom. She was a big fan of Mr. Wrestling number 2. So she would come to the matches. And then Jimmy Carter, when he came down, had the opportunity.
Lillian was her name.
Lillian, yes. So Jimmy came to the match. They took a picture, a very famous picture of Jimmy Carter with Wrestling 2 in a headlock. And, now all of a sudden, Mr. Wrestling 2 is a national known wrestler all over the place. And, look, he had his friends, and he had his people that would book him. Bill Watts was one. Bill brought him in, put him with Magnum TA to teach Magnum pretty much how to put everything together. Magnum had the tools, but Magnum was not a great worker. Okay. That took a while. And I think that teaming Magnum with Wrestling 2, first of all, that was the reason they teamed them, but also it worked. It helped Magnum slow down. It helped him put things in the right places. And then they had the 2 of them split as a team, and Magnum worked with 2 every night. And that was going to school, because Magnum now he's in the ring with Wrestling 2, and 2 is telling him everything to do and what have you. And it was great. I just was never a fan. I thought he was hokey as hell. He used to do the knee lift, but he would do this silly little dance that the people would absolutely pop for and go crazy for, and come with the knee lift. Jake Roberts stole the knee lift from Wrestling 2. And he would do this little 2, 2, 2 and do the knee lift. But look, I didn't like it. Everybody else did. The audience loved it. But they didn't have to deal with the old, just cynical old man backstage who was just miserable all the time, man. Smoked a pipe and just, bitched about everything. But he had great success. And Wrestling 2's wife made the robes, made all of Flair's extravagant robes. Greg Valentine, of course, Wrestling 2. I think she did Orndorff's, but she's the one that made all the robes for everybody. And so she made a great living for them as well. And went on, I think, he died peacefully in Hawaii. They moved to Hawaii, he retired, and just lived the end of his life. I think he got a much better disposition once he retired from the business, because God damn, he could be a miserable bastard.
Well, his wife could make a hell of a robe, I'll tell you.
Yes, she
could. Lynn Denton, the grappler, was another we saw a lot of traction with on social media, and we talked about masked wrestlers. He wrote a book a handful of years ago, and man, Lynn Denton, he was a staple in the old territory days, especially if you went in the Pacific Northwest, right?
Well, actually, Lynn started in Texas, in Mid-South, or in San Antonio, in Texas. Lynn's dad was a old timer, always around the ring, around the matches and stuff. Would carry the ring for spot shows for different folks and everything in Texas. And Lynn went out, and Lynn was kind of persona non grata in a lot of places, just because his dad didn't have the best reputation, I think. And people would just immediately associate them, go, yeah, I don't want to use him because, whatever. But Lynn went out and just proved himself as the grappler. And it's like, when you're the greatest wrestler in the entire world, by God, they don't call you a great wrestler, they call you the grappler. And that was his catchphrase. And he was an incredible worker. But Lynn, came out as the grappler, and he became a North American champion in Mid-South for Watts. Had the built-up boot. So, one leg was shorter than the other, so he had built-up boot gimmick. When you tapped that toe, by God, and he kicked you in the head, it was like just squishing a tomato on your head. Crimson would flow. And Lynn had great psychology, just an absolute phenomenal worker. Was one of the guys that I think anybody that would come in and go, I want to work with Lynn Denton, because he was just that good. He was really just that good. Got heat, knew how to get heat. Then later on, he went on, Tony Anthony came in, and they brought him in as the Grapplers, as a tag team in San Antonio. They put Tony under the grappler gear and made him grappler number 2. Back in the day, like up in New York, now as I say it, it was Kowalski and Stud, the Executioners. And they just call them Executioner number 1 and Executioner number 2. And so you have grappler number 1, grappler number 2. That's how you told them. And grappler number 1 was, stocky and built and like a brick shit house. And then you had Tony Anthony. So it was, they were.
Why did he never get a shot with WWE, do you think?
He did.
No, I'm just saying, it felt like he should have had a bigger run there.
He got a decent run as old T.L. Hopper.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Yeah. But then, they went from being the masked grapplers to taking the hoods off, and they became the Dirty White Boys. And that was Dirty White Boy number 1, number 2. And Lynn was always number 1. But Lynn was just an incredible talent. Then Lynn went up to Oregon, and I think, he found his home up there. Tremendous talent, also helped out with the book, great mind for the business, and a student of Roddy Piper's in a lot of ways in that psychology end of the business. So Lynn got over everywhere he went. He was that type of a talent. He knew how to get over. And his work, you couldn't see through any of it. It was spot on, and you loved to hate him. He was easy to hate. But backstage, everybody loved him because he was a pretty easygoing guy, funny, tough. I wouldn't mess with Lynn, but he was just a good guy, and people liked him. People liked working with him because he was really good in the ring.